Hello you guys and welcome back. Today we are going to be doing my February reading wrap up. So we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in February, my ratings, my thoughts, my feelings, all those things. I feel like February kind of started off a little weak, but then we got a little bit stronger as we kept on going. I think that I wasn't in the biggest reading mood. I've just had such a hard time like sitting down and concentrating recently. And that's kind of how I started feeling after Bookmas in December and then also throughout January. But I feel like it depends on what book I'm reading, because if a book I'm reading really captivates my attention, I am like all in on that book. Like I don't even feel like I'm reading at that point. But even if I get to that point with a book, like if I'm reading the first few chapters, like I'm just checked out. Like I cannot concentrate. So I'm really hopeful that does not carry on over into the month of March. In every single wrap-up video, I also want to start talking about my TBR a little for that month that I chose. And February was the first month where I had more of like a set TBR that I ended up choosing for this year. You guys know if you watch my TBR jar videos that I normally choose 6 books for every month, so I ended up reading 4 books out of 6, which I'm really happy with. I know not every single month it's going to be possible to finish all the books on my TBR. Obviously that is the end goal, but I think I really want to strive for reading at least half the books on my monthly TBR every single month, so that would be 3 out of the 6, and then if I read more, I read more. If I finish it, that's great too, but I feel like that's just more of a realistic goal because obviously not every month I'm going to be able to finish it. Let's go ahead and get into my February reading statistics. In the month of February, I read 6 books. Our genre breakdown is 2 romances, 2 fantasy, 1 sci-fi, and 1 mystery thriller. In total, I ended up reading 2,480 pages, and my average rating for the month of February was 3.8 stars. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the books that I read in February. We're going to start out with our first one, of course, which was You With a View by Jessica Joyce. I actually did read this and the next book I'm going to talk about in a reading vlog, which is my Candy Hearts Choose reading vlog that I uploaded for Valentine's Day. So if you guys want to see more in-depth thoughts while I'm reading it or any of my reactions, go ahead and check that video out. In You With a View, we get singular POV and we're following our main character, Noelle, and she just went through a very big loss in her family. Her grandma passed away, who she was really, really close with, and ever since then, a lot of things in her life just haven't been going very great. She lost her job, she moved back in with her parents. Mentally, she's not doing the best, and she feels like she needs something to break her out of that. She ends up finding something old of her grandma's, and it is a photo of her whenever she's really young with this guy that she knew nothing about. And her grandma were best friends, so she was like, why would my grandma never tell me about this? She ends up going to TikTok, making a video about it and posting the photo on there and asking if anybody knows who this guy is, if this is anybody's grandpa, any information she could get, so basically she can spend more time and learn more about her grandma after she had passed. The TikTok ends up going viral and she ends up meeting her grandma's long lost love, but of course there is a catch. His grandson was her old, like almost like nemesis and rival growing up, and the story just kind of takes off from there. I think where this book really shined was its relationships, not only Theo and Noelle together, but also Theo with his grandpa Paul, and also the way Paul treated Noelle too. She kind of got to have a little bit of a grandparent relationship with him, which was just a really special thing. I thought her parents and her brother and her best friend were just so supportive, and just like the relationships were so good. I loved the plot. I loved where things were going. I thought it was very different from a typical romance plot, and there was also like a little bit of a mystery element, not like thrilling at all, but it was fun because it kept me like intrigued and wanting to know more of what happened with her grandma and Paul. And I really thought I was gonna love this. I had heard so many people talk about this author and this book and have so many great things to say. I think that for me, unfortunately, where it really went wrong was the writing. The writing really took me out of the story. I feel like whenever you sit down and read a book for only 10 minutes or a chapter or whatever, a few pages, you know you're reading a book. You're not really getting sucked in because you really haven't given it enough time to really like settle and for you to really dive in head first. And sometimes when I'm not fully immersed in a story, I can feel like that, like it has nothing to do with the author's writing. I feel like I'm just not really giving myself enough time to fully concentrate on the book itself. And when I get really invested in a book, which I'm sure you guys can relate to, it's almost like I'm not reading. It's like I'm there with the characters. Like I don't really picture a lot of things. Like I just picture like kind of like the vibes and like objects and stuff like that. I don't really picture people, but it's just a feeling like no other. And even books where I don't rate them the highest ever for one reason or another, most of the time there are points where I can feel like that if the writing is very captivating and immersive, and the writing just really lost me here. I found a lot of points where I had to go back and read the previous page or the previous paragraph, or just like a lot of rereading and skimming back over things that I had already read because I felt like I missed something. And I don't really almost ever do that unless I'm just reading a few pages because I feel like I'm not, again, like I've said, fully immersed in the story. I would literally sit down for an hour and I would still be feeling like that at the end of the hour. This book just had something. I don't know if it was the writing, I think it was, but it just didn't really click with me, even though I wanted to love it so bad. This is also the author of The X-Files, which I heard talked about so much last year, and I really, really want to read it because I've heard amazing things. But I'm really nervous to go into that now because the writing in this one just did not do it for me. I just really couldn't get into it. It took me out of the story, and that is why I'm kind of in between like a 2.5 and a 3 star, because there were so many redeemable things about this book, but it just wasn't for me, unfortunately. Even though I really, really did want to love it, I do think there's a possibility that other people could enjoy it. It could just be like a writing thing for me, not for everybody. So definitely take that into account if you want to read this book or The X-Files, but it just wasn't for me. The second book that I read was a sci-fi, and that is Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Skyward series. In this book, we are following our main character, Spensa, and she lives in a world where she has been constantly under attack since before she was born. The pilots are like the heroes of their world, and she's always wanted to be one, and she ends up getting to be one, which is super cool. In the first one, we end up going to pilot school with her. We end up learning a lot about how to fly, the different formations, all of her friends, and like there's a definite sense of found family in these books that I really enjoy. But this one kind of takes a little bit of a different take. Spensa is going on a secret mission, and I thought it was really interesting. Definitely not where I thought we were going to go, but since this is a sci-fi book, you're learning so many different things about all of the creatures and aliens in this book. I feel like this is a classic time where the second book is just way more into the world of what you're actually getting yourself into, and this is actually setting the pace and the plot for the rest of the books, whenever I feel like the first book and a lot of sci-fi and fantasy things are just basic setup and getting to know your characters. I think though, because the found family of it all was so strong in the first book, I really miss seeing a lot of those vital characters that I really just enjoyed their interactions with Spensa and just who they were in general. We didn't really get to see as much of them in this book, but the secret mission was interesting. Learning about all the different things was interesting. I think I'm gonna rate this like a 4.25, around there. This is my second ever Brandon Sanderson book, and going from You with a View to this, it kind of solidified for me that it was the writing in this book that was just not doing it for me, because his writing is just so bingeable and effortless, which is so shocking to me because I just never really would have thought that way about an author who writes so much high fantasy. But he is one of those authors where you can just sit down for hours and just get immersed in the world, and that just has to be why he's so popular and so many people love reading his books. The third book that I read in the month of February was Finale by Stephanie Garber. This is the third book in the Caraval series, and this is a trilogy, so it is the final book, but there's also like a Christmas novella that just recently came out called Spectacular. I don't know if I'm gonna read that. If I do read that though, I'll probably read it like 2025 holiday time, so I'm just gonna call this series done for now. And I'm really proud to say that this is the first series a month that I finished. I finished 2 in total, which was obviously a big goal for me this year, so that has me feeling good. The first book is in Scarlett's POV, the second book is in Donatella's POV, and this third book is in both of their point of views, which I really enjoyed. They are both sisters, and in the first book they end up going to Caraval, which is kind of like this magical carnival where nothing's really real, even though it kind of is, but it's just like not really, it's not really clear if we're being honest. It's definitely whimsical, magical, and fun, and it has a lot of mystery elements to the fantasy that I enjoyed, so it's like a little bit of genre bending. I feel like the first one was the strongest in my opinion. I think I rated it like a 3.5, and I really wanted to wait until I was done with this series to solidify my ratings on these books, so I think the second one is probably just a 3 at this point, and this last one I think is like around a 3, 2.5. I love Stephanie Garber, okay? I love her writing. In the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, I just personally don't think Caraval was for me. There were a lot of things that I guessed and it got right. There were a lot of characters that just like didn't do it for me, kind of bothered me and annoyed me, which obviously whenever you're reading a book you want to enjoy the main characters. There were a lot of motivations, not even just of the characters that I didn't like, that I just truly didn't really understand. The way that the plot moved on just really did not do it for me. In the other books we were fighting like the same villain, and then all of a sudden we're fighting this brand new villain that comes about just like randomly, and we don't really know a lot about him, but like it just seemed like everything was impossible until it wasn't, and there wasn't like a great reason for why everything just randomly became possible. And it seems like a lot of things ended up happening so that the plot would just be fixed and be the way that they wanted to at the very end, and I think that's why I didn't really enjoy it. I think a lot of the times whenever I read a book like this where the plot devices don't make sense and they're literally just to get to the end of the story and it doesn't match with characters character's motives, it literally takes me so out of the book, and that's what this one did for me as well. Overall, for me, the Caraval trilogy, I think you can skip it. If you want to read it, you should read it before you read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, but if you don't really think it's for you, I would just recommend personally skipping it. But obviously everybody has their own opinion. I love the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. Personally, I just think it is so good and just so magical and fun, and I think that Stephanie Garber's writing really shines in that trilogy. I, however, as I've been saying, just didn't really enjoy the Caraval trilogy very much, unfortunately. Now getting into the other romance that I read in the month of February, which was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I think this is the beginning of a new interconnected standalone series for her, so I'm interested to see what characters she takes from this book to make her next book. But this one is dual POV, and we're following our two main characters, Lucy and Aiden. Lucy is a single mom and a hopeless romantic who has just kind of like given up on trying to fall in love. She's done the apps, she's gone on dates, and she just wants it to feel like easy and effortless. And one night she hears her daughter Maya up on the phone really late, and she's like, okay, weird. And Maya tells her she is on the phone with a romance hotline talking about her mom. Lucy takes the phone and ends up talking to the guy on the other side, which is actually our main character, Aiden, and they have a long talk about romance and how it should be effortless, how she's saying she doesn't want to try, she just wants to fall in love and she wants to feel easy. Lucy and Aiden's little chat ends up going viral, and it's a little bit of a slow burn romance. It's really cute. It feels real, but also very rom-com-y. Like, this gave me 2000s rom-com vibes, especially with the ending. The ending was really sweet. I liked how the plotline was a little bit different as well, and not something that I see in every other romance book. I thought the banter was good. I thought the tension was good. I enjoyed the slow burn. It was like the perfect amount of slow for me. There was like one or two things that were not my personal favorite, but I definitely think if you're looking for a good romance book, this should be at the top of your list. This was super cute and super fun. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm honestly really glad that I read it around like Valentine's Day, because it just gave like the perfect Valentine's Day vibes. I'm in between like a 3.75 to a 4, but I really enjoy it. I feel like this is just a really good solid romance, and I just really liked them together and thought they were really cute. Also, are you kidding me with this cover? Like, this is one of the most beautiful romance book covers I think I've ever seen. It's so pretty. After that, I ended up reading Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is a book that I've been meaning to get to for so long, and I regret not getting to it sooner. This is the second and final book in the Shepherd Kings duology. The first book is One Dark Window, and this duology is by Rachel Gillig. I read the first one last year around this time, and even still, this is one of the most unique magic systems I have ever read about. There's basically these things called providence cards, and if you touch a card with 3 taps, you get that power, and then to take away that power, you touch it 3 times again. There are only a certain amount of providence cards, so normally the people of higher power have most of them, at least like the most important ones, and these cards are so sought after that the king himself is literally going through trading and giving people things to have all the cards. And a lot of people in their kingdom called Blunder are trying to collect the cards, because if you collect them all, you can end like the sickness that is going around. And what gives you the sickness is the mist. So if you go into the mist, you kind of go crazy and you end up falling ill, but those with the sickness end up getting magical powers, and they get those magical powers, but they're also degenerating, so they're slowly dying. And there are so many different things going on, specifically like political things going on, that I thought were so interesting. In this second one, we actually get a lot of different point of views, which was super cool, and I think that's really what makes this book shine. I really enjoyed the first one, One Dark Window, where we were following our main character Elspeth, and her whole thing is she has like a monster in her mind because of one of the providence cards, and she also has a sickness, and that is like her degeneration process basically. But in this one, being able to get so many different point of views and seeing how people are trying to collect the cards and the different political aspects of it was so honestly interesting, especially with the political climate we're in right now where I live. I think that fantasy books more now than ever are just so important to read, because the political systems most of the time are kind of similar to what is actually going on or what could go on, which is honestly terrifying, obviously, but being able to read these books is so important, and I just love the kind of hope that fantasy books give me sometimes. Hope that even if we're going through kind of like a rough time overall personally, or just within our current political climate, we will eventually make it to the other end and everything will be okay. I remember finishing this because it is on Kindle Unlimited, so I did read most of this on my Kindle. I was laying in my bed and it was like 11 p.m. and I was crying because of all the things we end up learning about the monster in this book. Like, he is such like an anti-hero, and I really just like felt for him. I also really loved the romance in this book, and I think that having the different POVs really just added such a good element to this, because there are some things in this story that like were a little bit slower, and honestly if we only got one point of view, I don't think it would have been as good, but getting the other ones just really kept the pacing up and kept me wanting to read more. And I cannot wait for her next next book that's coming out. I think I'm gonna rate this like a 4.75, honestly. I think that this duology had a chance to be a 5-star if I would have read them more back to back, and I could definitely see myself rereading this duology someday. The final book that I ended up reading in the month of February was On a Quiet Street by Serafina Nova Glass. Brooke, this one was for you. This is a mystery thriller. You guys know I don't do those, okay, because I get really scared. This might have changed me, okay? And honestly, I think I'm entering my mystery thriller era. Whenever I would think of like a mystery thriller book, I would think like, oh, scary movies. Honestly, most of the time can't do those, but the books are just like different for me. I can put them down if I'm scared. I can lay it to rest and go read a fun, silly little romance book or a fantasy book to get my mind at ease. And I feel like these aren't even really scary. Like, it's not like a horror book. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of whenever I'm thinking scary movie. And I could have put it down, you know, if I wanted to. Didn't. This book was absolutely insane. You're basically following these 3 different women who live on this street in this like little town, and they're very rich and they all have different things going on. The book literally opens with one of the women talking about her son who recently died a year ago, and she has kind of gone a little bit crazy. Her life has just completely changed. She stopped working at her job and stopped being as close to her husband, and she just needs to know who murdered her son. So she's been creeping on the neighbors. She has like videos everywhere. She's sneaking into people's garages. Like, she's a little cray cray. One of her other perspectives, she thinks like her husband's cheating on her, and the other one I'm not really gonna get into because it was honestly like shocking what was going on and how the author fooled me into what the other character in this character's life ended up fooling everyone to think about her. When I realized that, I was so shook, and honestly it makes me want to read more of Serafina Nova Glass's work. This had me on the edge of my seat right from the start. I wanted to know what happened. I wanted to know how these women were gonna figure out and how all of their stories were gonna intertwine and how they were gonna work together to almost save each other from what was going on in their own lives. It was paced so well too that I just could not put it down. I literally finished this. I think I read like 30 pages the day before, and then I finished the rest of it in one day. It is a 300 pager. I will say, perfect length for a mystery thriller. It just keeps everything so fast-paced, and if you're wanting something fast-paced, you go for a mystery thriller, and if you're not getting that out of it, it's not like right, in my opinion. Like, it's too much. I really loved how all 3 of these women could not be any more different, not just with their circumstances that they've been dealt with in life or the things that they're dealing with the men in their life, but just their personalities, the way that they think. I really, really, really enjoyed how different they were and unique they were to each other. I think it made it feel like the story was more real, and it's crazy because this story could really happen in real life. When I finished this book, my adrenaline was pumping, and honestly, I don't think it has stopped since. This might be my first 5-star mystery thriller book. Like, I'm shook, guys. I'm shook too. Shout out to Brooke for getting me to read this book because she got it for me for Christmas. I cannot believe I enjoyed this as much as I did. If you guys have any other recommendations for mystery thrillers you think I would enjoy, let me know because I'm definitely looking for more. I love how fast-paced they are, and they're definitely books that are great for getting out of a reading slump, and I think I'm finally discovering that. And I definitely want to read more of Serafina Nova Glass's books. This was so excellent. I really enjoyed it. All right, those were all 6 of the books that I read in February. I hope you guys had a great February and a great reading month overall. If you guys have read any of these books, leave your thoughts in the comments down below so we can chat about it together. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you watched until this far in the video, go ahead and comment down below the house emoji for On a Quiet Street so I know who the real ones are who watched until the very end. If you want to keep up with me on the daily, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Goodreads. Goodreads especially if you want to see what I'm reading in real time. I'm always updating on there, and the links to all of these are always down below. And yeah, I really think that is it for today. I love you guys so much and hope you're having an amazing day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys. Ow. Ugh, 1 point or a norther. Okay. And then I read Peace.